So I'd ask everyone to mute their audio just so we don't have extra feedback. And the presentation will be recorded, and in another couple of days, it'll be posted online so that you can share it with other staff who need to have this information, and also for folks who weren't able to join right now. Please go ahead and enter any questions you have into the Zoom chat. We have staff who will be monitoring that chat, and we'll have an opportunity at the end to address any questions that have popped up in the chat that haven't been answered through just the flow of our presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. Tanasia, next slide, please. All right, quick overview of our session today. We're going to go through a welcome and some introductions, speak briefly about Youth Development Oregon, talk about the next steps and the timelines that you can expect for your grant, talk a little bit about reporting, and then have an opportunity for questions and answers at the end. Next slide. So it's quick housekeeping. This is an information session that is intended for you to have to put some questions in the chat, but that if there are really specific questions that are just for your grant, then those may need to be answered specifically by your grant manager in a one-on-one call with them. So please remain muted through the call, and don't hesitate to just put your questions in the chat, and then we'll be able to have a chance to answer them either in this session or at the one-on-one meeting that you'll have with your grant manager. Next slide. All right, quick welcome. Again, my name is Sally Deck. I am the Future Ready analyst. I'll also handle some of the other workforce readiness grants. And Molly, I'll pass it to you.
Thanks, Sally. Welcome, everyone. Molly Burns. I am a YDO grant manager and re-engagement policy analyst.
Hello, Melissa Gallardo. I am the YDO executive support specialist. Tanasia, I'll pass it to you. We're going clockwise on the screen, I think.
Hello, I am Tanasia Bishop, administrative specialist. Excuse me, I'm just behind the scenes today. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Abraham Magaña. I'm a grants manager for the Youth Community Investment Grant. Thank you for being here.
My name is Bill Hansel, grant manager, and it's good to see everyone this morning.
Good morning. My name is Jared Shaw. I'm a YDO workforce policy analyst and grant manager.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Cord Bucher, the Deputy Director for YDO. Our director, Brian Detman, may join us a little later in the meeting, but I just wanted to say that we're really excited to begin work with everyone. Congratulations. That was a really competitive process, and we look forward to getting started on the new biennium programming. We're happy you're here, and hopefully all your questions will be answered. I see them popping up in the chat, and I think a lot of this we'll be talking about today. So I'll turn it over to Paul.
Thanks, Cord, and good morning. So I'm the guy that will be behind the scenes a bit, answering questions. We're also going to be pausing periodically throughout this presentation, then I'll come back on screen and try to answer the questions that come into chat. I think a lot of these will be addressed throughout this presentation. But again, my name is Paul So. I'm the Re-Engagement Systems Manager and Youth Grants Lead. So Sally, I'll turn it back to you.
Everyone. You'll also notice that Bethany Moreland's name is on this slide. She's the procurement specialist working with all of YDO's grants. She's the person who is the primary point of contact for many of the questions around grant agreements. So we want to make sure that you remember that she's one of the folks who is available to help answer questions and get your grant agreement all lined up and in order. Next slide, please. This is a familiar slide, I think, for most of you. We talked about these, the YDO mission, vision, and values when we went through the RFA info sessions. But just as a reminder, we are really dedicated to ensuring that Oregon's youth have the opportunity to thrive and achieve their full potential. We're very excited for the 23-25 grant awardees, that we recognize the work that you do and the alignment that exists between our mission, vision, and values and the work that you are doing, particularly around ending racism and systems of inequity. Next slide. The YDO grants portfolio is valuable to understand just as we talk about the different grants, particularly around some funding sources. Some of these grants have federal funds and have some different restrictions. And so when we talk about future ready grants, they're kind of in their own little category because of the funding stream. Whereas community investment grants, we have the youth violence and gang prevention, we have solutions grants, promise grants, and the workforce readiness initiatives. And then for reengagement, we have the reengagement opportunity grant, and in a bit yet, we will have the reengagement collaborative grants, and those have not yet been awarded. But as we talk about the grants portfolio and as grant managers talk about the work that they do and where they have expertise, this can be a helpful resource for you to know about. Next slide. The chat has a number of questions in it, and perhaps some of those are the burning questions. Paul, I'm going to hand it over to you for this.
Perfect. Sounds good. And thank you, Sally, for getting us started. Just Tanasia, if you don't mind going back one slide, just to give some context, because I know Cord talked about how competitive these grants were. So we did have a little bit of numbers to share with everybody as we kick these off. So in case you're wondering, we had 141 total grants awarded as part of this RFA process. We were typically around a 50% or less award rate on it. So again, highly competitive process throughout. And we will be sharing out those numbers at our next council meeting around the real specifics around how each of those awards came out. So just more to come on that. Just want to put that out there that again, we had over almost 400 applications total with 141 awarded applicants. So Tanasia, if you want to go ahead and bump it to the burning questions. All right, so we know we have lots of questions, and today this is something new for us. We really just want to provide a high-level overview of the next steps. So that's why we are hoping you're all here and cover kind of the items to be aware of prior to that first reporting period in October. Can you begin working on your grants? Yes, you can begin. All grant funding will be able to be reimbursed back to the July 1, 2023 date. But again, reimbursement is contingent on an executed grant agreement. So we're in that process right now of getting those out. And I see a lot of questions in the chat that I'll address here shortly within that. But just if you have work happening, it totally makes sense. And please continue to do that. But know that the executed grant agreement is what ties to those reimbursement of funds. When can I receive funds? So grantees will be receiving their first reimbursement payment after everything is set up in EGIMS and SM Apply. So there's one of the questions in chat about reporting within the SurveyMonkey Apply system. And yes, that will be the same reporting system used throughout these grants. You have to have a executed grant agreement. We'll go a little bit more in detail with what that looks like. That's going to be happening over the next month or so that information is coming out to you. Completing and receiving an approved project plan. That is something that will happen right after your executed grant agreement. Some of you may want to start working earlier with your grant managers on that, and that is totally fine. And then obviously you'll have to submit and receive approved Q1 reporting documents. Just a note there that Q1 deadline is October 31st. So most people will be receiving those funds. We'll go a little bit more into detail about the startup funds here shortly. Of what that looks like if that is something that your organization is wanting. Again, how do we report? You're going to log into SM Apply before the first reporting date, and that's where all of your quarterly reporting information will be submitted either through that or Microsoft 365 like we've used in the past by NEM. And then why can't I see anything if you log into SM Apply now? Well, that's because your grant manager, who you'll be receiving information next week of who that is, has not assigned grant access for you as of this point. So just know that that'll be coming here in the next couple of weeks. And then what is or how do I log into SM Apply? That's something that your grant manager will be reaching out to you to help along the way within that. So how do we get a login? Again, for SM Apply, that's going to be information that will be sent out here in the coming weeks by your grant manager or your assigned YDD grant manager. Tanasia, if you want to bump to the next slide, and then I'll kind of cover these two pieces and then go through the chat questions before turning it over to the team. So what should I expect in the next week? So you're going to be receiving an email from procurement that is going to be coming most likely from Bethany Moreland, unless there's some assistance that comes into play with that through the procurement office. That email is going to be informing you of the insurance requirements. So please review that and begin obtaining those insurance, the insurances that are required as part of these grants, as well as the insurance documentation. You're also going to have who your anticipated YDD grant manager is listed in that email, along with our emails will be included in that. And then it's also going to include instructions on how to request startup funds. Some organizations may wish to have startup funds, which it's a little bit of misleading term, but we'll go over that here in the next slide. But your grantee will need, you'll need to contact your grant manager to discuss and have approved startup funding, which will be a part of your grant agreement. And then again, those startup funds all have to be taken care of before you'll receive a grant agreement for review and signatures. If we move to the next slide, it'll include information about startup funds. So startup funds are available upon request at the beginning of a biannual grant cycle issued as an initial disbursement. So this is the one and only disbursement that we can offer that is not a reimbursement-based disbursement. It can be up to 15% of your total budget. But just kind of to note about what startup funds are required. So we are currently sitting towards the end of July, and disbursement of these funds are going to require an executed grant agreement, which is within about 30 days of notification, or you have to have that signed grant agreement back to procurement within 30 days. So that can take a little bit of time into the month of August. You're going to have an approved project plan with your grant manager, and that is due within 45 days of an executed grant agreement. And then your organization also has to be set up in EGIMS and SM Apply. So if you've received funding from us or ODE in the past, you will already have institution ID within EGIMS. So that's a relatively short process. But if you're new to receiving YDD or ODE funds, that process can take up to a month to get approved and accessed into EGIMS. And then also the funding availability. So over the next month, YDD staff and ODE staff will be loading those funds into EGIMS within that. So startup funds do take a little bit to get to, but again, those are kind of the general pieces within that. So jumping back to the chat question, just to see where we are at with questions. So again, grant agreements will be executed over the coming months. So typically those are going to be starting to come out here in August from procurement. But then that process, once you receive that, will take is required to be back to procurement within 30 days. Questions about how funds are and will be questions that we don't have to do reimbursement. So all of our grant funding is reimbursement based. If you are going to have changes to your budget in terms of the budget categories, that'll be something you'll work directly with your grant manager along the side. Looks like somebody addressed and got their slides to be able to view. These slides will be shared at the end of the presentation in a PDF form, as well as posted with the recording after we get done. And then I'm going to go ahead and pause with the rest of the questions, because I think a lot of these questions will be answered as we go through. And I'm not sure who takes the next slide, but I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to whoever's next in the presentation.
Thank you, Paul. Actually, I think I'm next. So I'll go ahead and go to the next slide. I think this slide was covered. Yeah. So I'll be going over the overview of next steps. I'll go to the next slide, Tanisha. So this already happened. The intent to award notice, you received that email already from procurement. That's why you're here. Next, you'll be receiving other emails here from procurement as well. It'll be from Bethany Moreland, who's been our single point of contact during the application process, but still is here with this process. And the agreement, we kind of want you to go ahead and review. It covers expectations and kind of the requirements in certain time periods have to be abided by. You'll be required to obtain insurance and proper documentation. And then if you do, upon reviewing the grant agreement, you have some questions or something that arises when you go through it, go ahead and just hit reply on those emails. We'll both be, I'm CC'd on the email. So when the intent to award, the grant agreements go out, your assigned grant manager will be CC'd. But if you have any questions, just reply to both through email. Make sure you return the signed agreement, as well as make sure you provide also the insurance documentation. And just know that if the agreement's not signed within 30 days, the YDD may revoke your intent to award. Just to let you know. Next slide. something for new grantees. If this is the first time you've been awarded and have never received a grant from YDD or ODE, the Department of Education, the first thing that you kind of want to take into account is getting set up in EGIMS. And we would ask you to contact Taneja Bishop. There's an email there on the slide. She will help you kind of navigate you through that. But EGIMS is really the system that ODE, the Department of Education, administers for handling the disbursements to mostly schools, but also for our grant-funded organizations. So that you may already be in the system. Paul talked about that. And as well as kind of what Paul mentioned a little earlier, there may be a little bit of a lag from when you're awarded or when you sign your grant agreement to when you can actually access your EGIMS account, right? Depending on how long that process takes, it can be, I'm going to say mid-August, late August, September. It just kind of depends. Next slide. And I think that's.
I'm going to pass that to Jared.
Yeah, I think that's Jared. I was looking, who is that?
Thanks, Abe. So the next step after that is the project plan meeting, and Paul alluded to that a little bit earlier. But once that grant agreement is signed and executed, and once you're getting set up in EGIMS, the next step is going to be a project plan meeting, and that's really the kickoff meeting that you're going to have with your grant manager. So your grant manager is going to send you an email, and it's just going to schedule that time to meet with them, and it's really a time to go over the grant, make sure that you understand the expectations and all the reporting requirements, answer any questions that you might have, answer any questions that we have, and make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of the scope of work, and making sure that you understand what the grant entails. That email from your grant manager may also request that you log into SM Apply. So if you recall, SM Apply, SurveyMonkey Apply is the portal through which you applied for the grant. That is also going to be the portal through which you complete your project plan. So your grant manager will get you into that SM Apply. You'll complete your project plan, and that's also going to be the portal through which you complete your quarterly reporting going forward. Please, this is important, please refrain from setting up an account in SM Apply until you receive those instructions from your grant manager. We know you're eager to get started, and we are too, but if you go in and if you haven't already created an account in SM Apply yet, if you do that before we send you that email, there's going to be a link in our email to get you to that grant. So if you set up an account beforehand, you're just going to have a separate account in SM Apply that's not linked to your grant. So just wait until your grant manager contacts you with that information, and we'll make sure that you get connected to the correct grant. And I will pass it to whoever's next.
Thank you, Jared. Again, my name is Bill Hansel. I'm a grant manager, YDD data guy, so forth. Here you can see, and one of the things I want to state up front is that we're in a little bit of a odd state in that none of you currently are officially grantees yet. That happens when the executed grant agreement happens. And so some of these processes are contingent on certain things happening before them. And that's part of why we ask you to stop or refrain from making the SMA account right now, is because we will send an email link to you, and that email link links you to the current grant. So even if you were a past grantee in biennium, your access to SMA isn't linked to the new biennium yet. So hopefully that explains some of it. As I touch on the quarterly data report, I would also advise that your best preview of what the data will look like, because again, we're tied to the grant agreement being executed, but the current, there are current templates of the data report available on our technical assistance webpage. And maybe somebody could drop that in the chat. But that gives you basically the column headers or the variables that will be collected. By and large, those are going to be very similar for the new biennium. So that will give you an idea. If you're eager to set up queries or a way to report, those will give you guidance on what the variables are that we will be collecting. And specifically, Solutions is a little bit different of a category with regard to reporting, but it will still provide a general idea. So all reporting, aside from the EGIMS claim, is done through SurveyMonkey Apply. It's referred to as SM Apply and sometimes as SMA. So if you see those, it references SurveyMonkey Apply, and that is our reporting portal. Quarterly data reports consist of demographic information, gender, race, date of birth, and some educational and workforce status. The CI grants, which stands for Community Investment, that's Promise, Workforce, Gangs, and Solutions. Do not request PII as part of our quarterly reporting. PII stands for Personally Identifiable Information. As a general rule of thumb, do not send names, SSID numbers, social security numbers, anything like that. Do not send over email. And for future ready and re-engagement that do require collection of PII, there are certain portals that are set up that allow for that because of their security clearance. And those are just a couple items regarding the quarterly data report. The expenditure report for each quarter now includes a budget narrative, and the expenditures are just basically your requests for reimbursement. And those occur after the quarter in which the costs were incurred. A little bit of a change up for this biennium is we're because of the budget narrative requirement, which is new, we're having biannual narrative reports. I believe those will be due in quarters 2, 4, 6, and 8. This is for those of you who haven't done our reporting before, the narrative report is really a chance for you to tell your story and to supplement what's happening in the data report and the narrative, and the expenditure report. So it's just a way where they're really an amazing part of our reporting, and I really appreciate it because that's where we really kind of put a face to numbers, if you will. And then finally, EGIMS. And what I'll say here is EGIMS is a completely different system. It's managed by the Oregon Department of Education, whereas in comparison, SurveyMonkey Apply is something that we entirely regulate. So if you have questions about how you get EGIMS and so forth, Tanasia is able to help out with that, but that we can't assign anything in terms of your access to EGIMS. That's all done through the EGIMS team themselves. And as Abraham said previously, if you're a new grantee and have never received a grant before, it's very important to get set up in EGIMS, because EGIMS is effectively the bank. And that is how, there's no other possible way to reimburse except through EGIMS. And with that, I will pass it to whomever is next.
Thanks, Bill. It's me again. All right, some more additional information. We just wanted to give you kind of the website, our website. And this will be key kind of going forward as we'll start posting information related to kind of some of the information we actually covered here. Right there, what you see in that image is kind of the banner at the top of our website. And there's 3 little circles there, and it's for each specific type of grant. So you have your youth community investment grant, that's circled first, and you have a youth re-engagement and future ready. Currently, if you were to go to that right now, our website, and click on there's a option for technical assistance information where you can access that, but there's nothing there. It's just going to say under construction, but it will be pre-populated. Like I said, it's still kind of a work in progress. And that's where we'll start putting information related to EGIMS, any forms that you need to fill out, anything for getting set up for automatic deposit, any new information relating to quarterly reporting as quarterly reporting is happening. If there's any updates or changes to perhaps forms or something you should know, we'll be putting it on those pages. And we'll be sending out emails and letting you know when these type of changes have been put in those sections. because it'll be happening as we here in the next few weeks. And as well, we'll be posting on there on our website any future trainings. Sometimes we do trainings around what data reporting looks like. And a lot of these trainings are really helpful, I think, for a lot of our grantees and making the process easier and seem less, initially what right now may seem very intimidating. But as you go through some of these trainings and access the webinar, you say, oh, okay, that's all I have to do. Or I download this and use this tool. It makes it so much easier. And then we also have a YouTube channel as well, where that's where everything will be posted. And so there's also the website on this slide to the YouTube channel. And it's also on our website, on the front page of our website. If you scroll down, I think there's a little section at the bottom on the front page of our website, linking you to our YouTube channel. With that, I think the next is we open it to Q&A. Yeah, Q&A time.
Sorry about that. Just realized my camera wasn't on either because I was staring at the chat. I didn't think people wanted me that close to the screen. All right, so we're going to go through some of the chat questions. I think most of these were addressed on it. Just a note, both the EGIMS link to the ODE EGIMS page has been posted in chat by myself, so it comes under a PS if you want to access that. It also is hyperlinked in the presentation that we'll be sharing out here after a bit. And then Abe also posted our current technical assistance page, which does have some EGIMS information on it. As we're transitioning into the new biennium, we'll be updating those technical assistance pages. But the EGIMS information on our past biennium technical assistance page does include the current information on that. So please feel free to access that. So kind of going back through the chat just to cover some of the questions. Again, one of the questions was about how funds are and will be dispersed, assuming that we don't have to do reimbursements. Again, all of our funding is reimbursement based outside of that initial startup funds on that side. So if you need startup funds, that will be something that you'll reach out next week to your grant manager that's listed in the email from Bethany around insurance and startup funds. But after that point, all funds are reimbursement based on that quarterly or monthly, whatever you choose with your grant manager. And as the budget changes, you'll be able to work with your grant manager to change on that because those budget categories do change over the course of the biennium, which makes sense. You'll work directly with your grant manager on that side. You'll be notified next week in that email from Bethany Moreland of who your anticipated grant manager is. We may still have some shifts behind the scenes, but that we will make sure that's communicated with you. But if you have questions moving forward, please feel free to reach out both to procurement as well as that anticipated grant manager that is listed in that email. Interested in quarterly reporting requirements. We went through that on that. We'll also share this out as a PDF within that. And yes, most of those will be in SM Apply, if not a link to a online document that you can access and use within that. The reporting data, again, those will be coming out once we get these executed grant agreements out to you in more detail, and your grant manager will work specifically with you on that. There has not been huge changes to all of that data reporting since the past biennium. So even if you weren't a current grantee for us this past biennium, that's a great way to get that insight and that information within that. Those final details should be coming out here in the next month or so. A question about state rate for hotels. I don't know about that. That will be something we'll have to check within that, and it would be something I encourage you to talk with your grant manager, some specifics about that when that time comes with it. If you are using, if you're going as for one of the convenings, whether it's for Future Ready or re-engagement or other pieces on that, typically we'll try to coordinate with that individually when those events are sent out. Again, we covered a lot of the reporting and what that kind of looks like. To read more detail, and during the project plan meeting, your grant manager will go over a lot of that information with you. Some questions around contacts and point of contact. So when we start that project plan work, you will be able to update all of your contact information within SM Apply. So we are doing our initial contacts with the project plan through SM Apply, and there'll be areas for you to be able to update that information. If there's an important change in communication next week when that email comes out for Bethany, please respond back directly to Bethany and your grant manager so we can make that adjustment as we get these new documents out. We talked about the measurable outcomes. Yes, there is a template for the project plan. Again, that'll be shared with you through SM Apply. So nothing you have to worry about until we get that executed grant agreement, or if you're grant manager and you connect, you can definitely start working on that earlier, but that would be something that your grant manager will be reaching out here in the next few weeks with more information. Can more than one person in your organization be signed up for EGIMS? I believe the answer is yes. Hopefully a grant manager can change me if I'm incorrect on that, but that would be something that you would request through that EGIMS website and through that documentation of access. Again, it's outside of our operating systems within that. Cord, did you have more to share with that?
Yeah, what I know about EGIMS is that you can have multiple users that have access. There are different types of user access, so not everyone necessarily would be able to submit claims, but there are viewing rights as well as the ability to enter and submit claims. But as you get signed up for EGIMS, you can essentially identify who you want to have which access, and they'd be able to tell you how many folks, for example, could enter claims.
Perfect. Thank you, Cord. A question around if you are new to EGIMS, yes, please start that process as soon as possible. Tanisha will be monitoring her emails. So if you need some direct assistance, but again, check out that website provided by ODE that will help you walk through that process as well. But Tanisha is available for that. Please don't feel like you have to wait on that to get an email from your grant manager. Tanisha will connect you behind the scenes with the grant manager if that is the case as well. Sorry, I keep going through the questions. I'm reading and thinking at the same time. That's always hard. For community investment grants, is PII required in the annual report instead of quarterly report? And is it not required, or is it not required at any time? Bill, can I turn that question over to you?
Yes, thank you. Good question. PII is not ever required for the data reports for community investment grants. Occasionally in the past, with some of the federal reporting requirements, if we ever do require PII, it will be set up through a secure reporting requirement, and that would, I don't believe that's going to be necessary. But if it was, and in the past, an example has been for the federally funded Title 20 grants, due to some federal reporting, we had to be able to collect some data, and we set up a special portal to submit that. But in terms of regular quarterly reporting, both our annual reports in Q4 and Q8 and all of the other quarters do not require PII.
Thank you, Bill. And Bill, so if you want to just stay online, just correct me if I'm incorrect on this, but the question is, does that mean narrative reports are not submitted for every quarter, just even ones? I believe the narrative report is on so the even ones, 2nd, 4th, 6th, and 8th quarter, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you. A question here about grants. Some of the grants are federally funded and some are state funded. So if you are receiving a Future Ready grant, those are federal funds, as well as a Youth Promise initiative grant out of the CI. All other grants are general fund or SSA dollars, are the re-engagement funds. And double checking with Sally, Cord, and Bill that I got that correct. No comments, so I'm assuming I did.
Sorry, I was in the chat. What was your question?
Just verifying, Future Ready funds are the federal funds, as well as Youth Promise Initiative and Community Investment are the only federal funds. And Youth Promise are not all federal grants. About half of them are federal funds.
But all Future Ready funds are federal funds this year.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yes.
And just to be clear, there's a question here, is our award amount for the whole biennium? Yes, the award amount listed on the intent to award is for the entire 2-year biennium on that side. Again, new grantees, please do contact Tanisha with questions around EGIMS. She will be our lead on that side. Just keep those questions coming within that. Will you be capturing and sharing the chat as well? We'll have record of it, but we'll probably not be sending out a Q&A. If you have specific questions, please do reach out to that grant manager that is listed next week in the email from Bethany. If an organization has multiple awards, can I have access to all awards in one EGIMS and SMA account? I believe that those are going to have to keep separate, so you will have to make separate claims for each grant. We also need to keep those separate in SMA. Thank you, Abe. I see your head nodding, so perfect. I appreciate that. If
Paul,
sorry, go ahead, Bill.
I would just add that we have the ability to link your grants so that in SMA, so that you will be able to see all of your grants, but that happens by individually linking your account to each one of your grants. So if, say, you have 3 grants with us, it will require 3 links to your one account, and then you'll be able to view all of your YDO grants in SMA. And as you said, for EGIMS, each one will be listed separately, but your EGIMS access will allow you to view all your grants, but each one will be dealt with separately.
Perfect. Thank you, Bill, for the clarification. Question here is, if we were a grantee last biennium and have been awarded grants this biennium, will you have the same grants manager? Grant managers are reassigned every biennium, so there are some that will remain the same, but also some that have had to change to make sure that we're balancing them out, as well as depending on what type of award you've received. So the answer is yes, or maybe. I guess it depends on how you were assigned behind the scenes. What is required to submit for reimbursements? What kind of stipulations are there to how we can use the money for our intended program? Those are all details that will be worked out with your grant manager in the coming future. Again, Bill covered the general requirements, but we can cover that in more detail as we move forward. Hello, do you have more information to share on the collaborative grant? The collaborative grants will be coming out this fall for applications. Those have been adjusted slightly. So at this time, we only anticipate that RFA coming out. The details will be shared later this summer and early fall within that. Does YDD plan to issue a press release on the grants? If a grantee wishes to issue a press release, what would we work with? Who would we work with, excuse me, on YDD on the information and approval? That is a great question. So Cord, you may want to unmute to help address some of this. So the short answer around YDD's plan to issue a press release as of yesterday, late afternoon, we have published an intent to award, which includes all intent to award and not selected awardees, or not selected applications for award. That has been published to our listserv, as well as it'll be published later today, most likely on our website. But Bill, Cord, do you want to address the press release piece?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we've released information broadly about the awards. If your organization wants to share some information, particularly with local media, I think that's great. You can, I would say that you'll probably want to wait until you've got an executed agreement. And then your grant manager can help you out with, if you have questions about, language to use in what you're, how you describe it or anything like that. But I would just, say you can work with your grant manager, and we're actually working on some guidance about, let's say that you have an event and you or you're developing materials for a program and you want to use a logo, we'll have guidance for that as well. So we'll be able to provide you with a little bit of guidance and support on that through your grant manager.
Awesome. Thank you, Cord. And yeah, so thanks, Cord. I know you were working on that yesterday, so I appreciate that update. So it looks like we had some requests for some contact information, so appreciate those that are posting that in there as well. So Bethany's email address is posted in the web or in the chat, as well as Tanasia's. Also, we will make sure that those links are live before we share the PDF on our website of this presentation, so that you can access all of our contact information should you need it. A question here is final report and QA report one and the same? So yes, Q8 report is essentially your final report. Bill, you might have some more information around what that may mean in terms of reporting, so I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you, and appreciate the question. We do call both the Q4 and Q8 reports annual reports, because those are basically the final report of each year of the biennium. And so if you hear something referenced as like year one annual report, that is that one in the same as the quarter four reporting, and one in the same as except it would be year two final report or year two annual report. That is also one in the same as the Q8 data report or Q8 reporting.
Thank you, Bill. So there's a question that came direct message just for people that are arriving late, just to clarify that, yes, this recording will be posted on our YouTube channel that Abe shared about earlier. Most likely that'll probably happen early next week, Monday, Tuesday of next week, once we get time to pull it down and get it organized. Another question about RCGs or re-engagement collaborative grants. Will they be available to all current grantees or just those awarded with a re-engagement opportunity grant? That information is currently being developed, so we will have to share more information out about that at a later date when we release the RC or the re-engagement collaborative grant information. So with that, I'm actually, looks like I'm at the bottom of the chat list. So if you are typing a question, please continue to type that. Abe put our link to our YouTube channel where all of this information, as well as the other presentations we do. Just to also note, I appreciate the comment about these webinars being very helpful. So we are planning that. And so there will be more information coming out for other webinars that we're going to be holding around data. So Bill and Molly will be holding some data training information as that information comes out and grants are executed, as well as just general information sessions that we will try to do as critical information is available. So yes, Melissa, or I don't know if Melissa's still on the chat, but maybe Jessica, can you grab the listserv link, or one of the staff grab the listserv to that, please? So yeah, that brings up a good point. So our listserv links, if you are not signed up for our listservs, please do go to our website. The link will be posted here shortly into the chat. And that's going to be where you'll receive our general announcements, public announcements around our council meetings and other information that we share out to the community and public information. Again, thank you and congratulations to everybody on receiving this. We'll go ahead and stay on the call. Perfect. Thank you. Abe has now posted that email list within that. With that, and we'll get this posted shortly. If you have a burning question and need to unpause, feel free to do that. Sally, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, everyone. This has been a great opportunity to go through some basics of these grants. And again, you'll hear more from your assigned grant manager, as well as from Bethany Moreland in procurement about the grant agreement in the next week or two. So know to be looking out for that. And that most of our messaging is going to be to the email addresses that were listed on the grant application. So that would include a number of folks in your organization you needed to have listed in your application. So we have a variety of contact emails that we will be reaching out to. If you don't hear from us by the end of there's a request right here to send a recording via email to someone specifically. So we will be aiming to keep emails updated, but if you don't hear from us within about 14 days, please reach out to us just to ensure that we do have good contact information for you. And we appreciate the opportunity to be in relationship with all of you in getting all of this great work done. So if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat or unmute yourself and just ask us directly, because we have a couple of minutes left. And again, congratulations, everyone. This was a very competitive cycle, and we're delighted for the work that y'all will be able to do.